gonna pretend like there's anyone randomly like stumbling upon the stream. I'll just get started. Probably by like increasing my gain, since I have my mic right here. So I think I need to increase the volume by at least a little bit, so that while I clean, I can keep talking and yapping. I feel like this is like the only way that'll motivate me to clean my way out of my depression. So that's what I'm gonna do here. Let me change my ticker a little bit. Here we go. Have that paired set up. Let's get started. I do have like a stream on like in the background. Doesn't really matter to me. So yeah, I have a lot of messes to clean up. And this happened like the day before yesterday. But you know what? I'm gonna start here. Let's first off, I like want to show this. I'm kind of proud of it. Secondly, I have a significant amount of mess to clean up here. I think my mic is... Okay, I thought my mic was gonna go further. What happened here? Yeah, I think I need to put this on this side. Maybe that'll help. Anyway, let me test. I need to be able to like communicate wherever I am. My gosh. Hello. Okay, that didn't work. Oh, wait. No, that's not my... Also, why do I told myself I was going to change my stream to like an IRL one. And I'm literally like, why else would I have this camera? Well, phone, but still. Alright. I messed that up completely. Okay, so I forgot to test this mic. Mainly because I already tested this mic like 2 weeks ago and it was working just fine wherever we go, and now it's not. That's odd. What the fuck? I don't like it here. What's the use of me having this? Alright. I think I'm gonna go use my other mic. I'm gonna switch to my desk one for a minute. Yeah, so the reason why I got this mic is because I thought it was gonna be better because it was more expensive. Nope. It's the same exact brand too as this old mic that I had. I mean, it's really useful. I do like the brand a lot, but that's why you don't trust capitalism. Alright, let me switch back. Hello. Oh, wow, this is kind of loud. Okay, I think I'm gonna turn the volume down a little bit. Did this work? Yep. Maybe a little too well. Hello. Okay, this is better. Testing. 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 Why does this work better? Like, the connections are so much better. Luckily, I have like two of these mics, so here's the other one. I guess that's what I'm using now. Yeah, so now I can start like actually talking. Yeah, so reason for the name of this stream is because I'm just so fucking tired. No, like for real. I'm just so tired of the West and its indoctrination. And then the fact that like so many people can't even get over it. It's like, I know that all of these people, they're indoctrinated. No, they're not gonna be able to like share anything or whatnot. You know, they're not gonna be not share, but like they don't really understand like the degree to which they've been. Oh, okay, so here it's kind of limited, the connection. Anyway, it's like you know they can't really help it because I don't know. It still irritates me though. And I feel like rightfully so. Because in the West, like, it's all about, you know, you did this, you have to do this work, you have to do this or that. There's no sense of collective responsibility. There's no sense of, oh, hey, maybe if we work together with these people who are currently very indoctrinated, I don't know, maybe that's how they'll get to the other side. But no, here in the fucking West, it's all about, you know, oh, well, they believe something different than what I believe, so, like, fuck them. It's just like, what the hell? How are you going to say that you are aware, awake, whatever you want to call it, woke, like the actual definition of woke, which is quite literally a matter of awareness? How the fuck are you going to tell us that you're any of those things? That you're healed, that you're whatever this, like, therapy speak you used to describe yourself and to try to differentiate yourself and to try to basically tell us, you know, I'm so different from everyone else. I don't understand it. And it's kind of crazy because it's like, okay, here I am, my, like, unemployed ass, and it's like, I'm still able to have empathy for people. I'm still able to, you know, even with my depression, which is, like, fucking chronic, I'm still able to care. Like, I literally bought, like, an audiobook from like, I mean, not from, but by bell hooks, and I was able to listen to the first chapter, like, a few nights ago, and I was just like, oh wow, this is great, because it is. Specifically, it was like, I think the title is like all about love, and then there's like something, like some, like the sentence afterwards. And basically, in that first chapter, in the first chapter as well as in the forward, she basically spoke about, like, or wrote about how we basically have a loveless epidemic here in the West. And mind you, she wrote this around the year 2000, so just before the imperialist wars that the US waged on Iraq and Afghanistan. And by the way, I have to make an island of, like, wealth as part of my cleanup process. That's always how I've operated. Yeah, but anyway, like, you know, she spoke about the loveless epidemic, which of course is still in full force now. You know, bell hooks passed away during the COVID-19 pandemic back in 2021. I don't remember what the cause of her that was, but it may have been COVID. But anyway, yeah, she wrote about the loveless epidemic, basically, like, I would say, like, loveless pandemic. And she also wrote about how our actions are either love are either like centered on love or centered on the loveless. And of course, love is a choice. It's not like a natural state of being, it is a choice. It's something that we can do on an individual basis, do on a global, communal, whatever basis. But it is a choice. And to me, I take that as, because he was a feminist as well. I take it to mean that, love as part of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Which centers on aspects of the first level being like physiological, then the second one being like security, and then the third one being along the lines of, I can't figure out what the third one was. It's not just security, it was like, I guess it's like the whole caring and nature portion. I mean, I can look it up, but yeah. And then you get to basically like self-actualization and that sort of stuff. I know there's like a fourth level that I forgot. But yeah, that's basically, like, I feel like, that idea of love as being part of like what we view as important in society. I think that's important. And of course, she's coming at it from like, from the perspective of being a black woman, a black American woman. And so without love and care and mutual aid, the black American community would not have been able to have maintained itself through, centuries of enslavement and centuries of racial abuse that are still ongoing. And I think that that's the point, right? And from like everything from, I don't think you call them memes, but in terms of like what people circulate like online, right? Let me like, my keeper. Okay, but like, let me show. Yeah. I think I'm getting tired from like carrying that around while I try to do this stuff. But yeah, basically from what people who have read her work, and especially black people who have looked at her work, they seem to always be centered around love and community, mutual aid, those sorts of concepts. And I mean, being in the West kind of precludes you to normalize hate. Basically, just like the nature of capitalism being the way that it is. Being this concept, that requires that we fight each other constantly for resources, whether that resources attention, or if that resources food and water, if we're in such an unfortunate situation. Like, the norm is that if things are going relatively well for the majority of people, then mutual aid is not necessarily a priority. People don't feel the need to donate, they don't feel the need to spread awareness of issues that exist in their local communities. They spend all of their time basically writing or talking about like issues that impact people elsewhere without like analyzing and realizing the issues faced by their own neighbors. They don't go on social media. Usually it does happen, but like usually when there's social media attention, it's more or less about it just seems like in the West we are encouraged to see each other as competition to the point that even like even quote unquote leftist spaces are supposed to be about competition or an audience, like who's the better leftist, who's the better, more empathetic person. We constantly compare each other. Rarely do we see things from a reality of care and a reality of like, what are we capable of doing together? It's like very few things have led to actual like revolutionary type of care, radical love, those concepts that bell hooks and other women of color authors espoused in their works. Not just authors, of course, but advocates, activists, etc. And I feel like, the reason why people don't normally address local issues in the same way that like they address global issues. There are people who protest for Palestine, people who protest for climate change, and rightly so. But unfortunately, people don't really protest about their local homelessness crises. And most parts of the country have that. Most parts of the US have that, unfortunately. And many Western countries as a whole have that as their norm. And again, unfortunately. But we rarely hear about it. We rarely hear about people who are taking homelessness seriously. And of course, at the same time, Black Lives Matter, that was something that was in the works for years before 2020. There's that awakening, and then like, usurping of the organization itself, which diluted, unfortunately, the meaning, mainly because neoliberal Democrats ended up co-opting the values, and so it made it look like a joke to a lot of people, and that's unfortunate. And I think there's also quite a lot to say about just the fact that because of the way that we see other humans as being competition, we don't empathize with them enough, or we think that empathy for them isn't necessarily important, or as important as solidarity with people across the world who are facing what we consider to be far more serious issues, which I think is the wrong way to go about things. Because first off, way to liberation is not exactly about who's the most oppressed, who is the most at risk, who's the most at need, who's the most in need. It's about actual mutual love and care and empathy and nurture. Those are all basically dimensions of love that Bell Hooks described. I believe that's the forward section where she described that. Wait, I'm gonna need to have this over here in my instrument thing. And I don't know, I guess maybe what made me want to do this stream is that again and again and again, I'm seeing people who claim to be leftists try to use hate as currency, basically. Hate in the form of clout, or I mean, more like clout in the form of hate, as currency, I guess. Because of course, in the US, in the West as a whole, we have not only an empathy problem, but we also have a political polarization problem. But instead of trying to get to the root of political polarization, which is quite literally all about the indoctrination that's brought about on us by social media companies that only encourage us to argue, because by arguing we increase our engagement. Instead of focusing on that, we focus on stereotyping personalizing issues, right? Like the concept that every single Jewish person is a Zionist, which is not true. And even those who are Zionists, they literally have been indoctrinated into that line of thought. And there have been many Jewish people who have literally spoken about how they were indoctrinated and why it's so hard to get out of that indoctrination. But instead of listening to those videos, we just react. And I think that's the ultimate problem with Western thought. We react. We react too soon. We react without patience, without kindness, without empathy. And that's the only thing that we do. That's the only thing that we know how to do because of our own indoctrination. Because reaction is about survival, ultimately. Reaction is about, like, the reason why we react as human beings is because we perceive a threat. Whether that threat is directly to us, or to our loved ones, or to people that we care about. But the problem with reaction is that we quite literally limit our capacity for empathy, for just being able to see each other as being worthy of solidarity, of unity. Because I'm sorry, but like, what the fuck is the use of leftism if we're not using it as a way to care and empathize and nurture? To me, it's useless. Like, that's why even though I recognize that, for the most part, I am a leftist, I have a very hard time identifying with the term. It's not because I want to be wishy-washy. It's not because I don't see solidarity with other leftists as important. Of course I do. But it's the fact that Western rhetoric, I mean leftist rhetoric, is always, Western-centric. And what is the West about? It's about, the West has a lineage of destruction and subjugation. And so that is the context that most Americans come up with. And I feel lucky that, I have like 0 ancestors who were from the West, right? And so me being 100% Asian, it gives me, some type of way to look at things differently than most of my peers and colleagues and neighbors. Even as someone who grew up here in the US, who was born here, who's never left the country, at least I can go ahead and be like, okay, well, I know what it's like to be in Filipino culture, right? I know what it's like to be me. I know that there is a different way of thinking than our neoliberal Western notions of empathy and respect. Because whether you're talking about Africa, you're talking about the Philippines, Asia as a whole, Turtle Island, the Pacific Islands, like, the thing that they all have in common is that they had very strong societal groupist units. Whereas in the West, the collective was always subjugated. And so freedom looked like individualism. That's why we are so individual in terms of our aspirations, in terms of, that's why the ego is centered so much in Western thought and ideology. It's always all about, you have to work hard and persevere and basically internalize insecurity based off of Western values. And I'm just like, there's a better way of thinking. There's a better way of thought. Even though I personally have like trust issues, and so I probably would never be the person to ask for help if I didn't have to. Like, I do recognize that that's part of my Western indoctrination, and for me it's like something that I know that I need to unlearn, that I will hopefully one day unlearn. I'm still trying to figure out like what to do with these boxes. Oh yeah, I have to change the cartridge. Hate that. I think I'm putting this here, like here. And if you haven't noticed, yeah, part of my Western indoctrination does have to do with like consumerism. Like, I know that for a fact. That's something I'm trying to unlearn and work on, but it is hard. And it's like most people talk about consumerism in ways that, again, personalize and internalize. They don't see ending consumerism as, any type of collective effort. Or if they do, it's about, it's still centered on personal shaming rather than collective responsibility. Because to tell the truth, the reason why Amazon is so successful, right, is because they provide a need. The reason why Amazon is able to make so much money off of people, even at the exploitation of their own workers, is because they fulfill a need. A lot of people are literally just busy. A lot of people cannot go to the grocery store. Some people, like myself, are compromised, so just going in person to the store, that's not something that I can do without risking my health. I at least cannot do that on a regular basis, right? Like, we pretend that convenience is inherently wrong, when the reality is that convenience is all about serving, disabled people who otherwise cannot access something. And I mean, that's another thing that I hate about like Western indoctrination and thought. Just the fact that basically, if you're like, I have disabilities, they're just like, get over it, get over yourself. They act like you like having a disability, and that is just hilarious to me. Oh, here's my. I completely forgot that this mic had a bag or whatever. I'll put it here. This is for my headphones. Well, earphones. Like, I literally have like an ear infection. I should not be wearing this. I should probably be using like some sort of headphones, like earphones. But whatever. These are just like so comfortable. That's why I use them. Where do I put this? I still have that to clean up. Maybe I should like place my e-readers. Oh wow, why do I have my e-readers stacked on the book? Or I mean, stacked with a book here. Yeah, so this book is called The Philippines Reader. I was lucky somehow. I found it like on Amazon 2 weeks ago. I was trying to find this thing for like years. Like, I actually ordered one off of eBay and it never came because eBay was like, the seller was like, oh yeah, that's not available. I'm like, why did you take my money? So yeah, I found this. So it's called The Philippines Reader, History of Colonialism, Neocolonialism, Dictatorship, and Resistance. And I think the reason why it was so hard to find is because, like, I think this book was published back in, like, the 80s, mid-80s, I believe. So yeah, maybe I'll read this, like, later on in the stream if I finish cleaning. I kind of doubt that I will, but yeah. Let me put my phones on top of my speaker that I don't use. I might have to move the speakers. Early notifications on Facebook. Well, that means I use Facebook too often. I think that's why I get paid. Even if it's like $1, you still get paid by Meta. It's ridiculous. Because I just love shit posting. That's kind of why. Let me settle down over here. I think this works better. Yeah. I have this old mic. Well, this is not a mic. This is a mic holder. Supposed to be for mics like this. Like this. And then I used to use this as an audio interface, but I got tired of like having to turn it on and off. Yeah. I gotta find a place to put this in. Probably gonna be... I don't know yet. So yeah, if you don't know, I am Fornesus. I am currently doing an IRL stream at home, cleaning up my stuff because I am chronically depressed. I also want to talk about basically what I do not like about like Western indoctrination. You know, because even I do like actions that I don't like, but I know that I do them because of Western indoctrination. Just like, you know, buy this, buy that. I do that and I hate it. I hate that I do it, but I do it anyway. I forgot that's where I wanted to put that. I want to clean this part up. Oh, here it is. I was looking for this thing. I almost bought like another one, but I was like, no, I'll find it. And I did. But yeah, another thing that I do not like about Western indoctrination, well, has everything to do with the ego. Everyone has a fucking ego. Everyone. Even I have one. I don't know, it's like, don't we miss the point when we make it all about ourselves and our actions or whatnot? Sorry, like, my audio is gonna cut off from time to time, like, when I'm here. Just because I'm, like, behind the wall. Where did that thing go? It had, like, a USB. Oh, yeah. It's over here. Or somewhere. I just like stacked it full of a bunch of stuff. I'm not gonna find it like right now. Probably not. Oh, and I have to return this. Yeah, I'm literally returning that. But yeah, no, I don't. I mean, is it like human nature, kind of? Be selfish and have an ego, etc. I think so. I think we can safely say that that is the case. But the problem is that we don't like even make an attempt to regulate it, right? Everything is all about like what I'm able to do, even though my circumstances are this and that. It's like I'm poor and undocumented, and I support the Green Party. It's like, okay, cool. But like, you know, you're the exception, right? Like it's the people who are the exception who always think that leftism, for instance, is a virtue, and it's like that's not the point. the point is the audio again. But the point is mutual aid and solidarity with the working class, not fucking virtue, like focusing on virtue, focusing on being selfish, believing that only people who think like you are the ones deserving of liberation, when in fact liberation is for all. That's and that's what always frustrates me. It's like, yes, of course I recognize that personal responsibility is a thing, but I don't think we focus enough on collective responsibility. Collective care and nurture. All of those things that constitute not only love but radical love. The idea, the concept that love is for all, liberation is for everyone. The fact that we need to be united against the working classes, against the ruling classes. We need to unite the working classes against the ruling classes. Like, your enemy is not the random millionaire over there. Like, yes, they exploit. Yes, they are like petit bourgeoisie. But they're not like the actual owners of the system, right? There are people who could potentially have solidarity with you. But even at that, though, of course, personally, I see more capacity for solidarity with, like, actual, like, working class people. I don't know. It's like, I know I'm talking to the void, and maybe I'm wasting my breath. But I feel like I need to let this out. It just frustrates me. It's like, yes, I get it. We are indoctrinated. We're all very much indoctrinated. Anyone who says that they're completely healed and whatnot, they are usually some of the most vile people. The people who show that indoctrination is still going on very strong, even when you have the aesthetic of liberation. You actually aren't liberated. Like, that's just the truth of the matter. Like, the aesthetic of liberation is nowhere near as important as actual liberation. Being able to bring people together and being able to bring people into community with each other. That is a gift, that is a skill, that is important. But so many people want, instant results. They think that because they did one protest, every problem will be solved. Just because they voted. Cookie. What cookie? Yeah, just because they voted, they don't have to do anything else. On either an individual or a collective level. But that's not true. But at the same time, there's not only one way of doing things, right? And not everyone can do the same thing. Anyhow. Because the truth of the matter is that, like, we only have so much capacity as individuals. Because not everyone has a big platform. I certainly don't. Not everyone has the same ability to do what another person does. You know, some people can, like, we know that there's some people who can run a mile in less than 5 minutes. I can't do that. I could never do that, not even at my fastest. At my fastest, I think it was like 7 minutes. It used to be like 16 minutes back when I was in middle school. It probably would be around the same now, if not like worse. In the same way, we need to understand that not everyone is able to do the same type of protest. Not everyone is able to, quote unquote, show up in the same ways. And that should be okay. But to a lot of people, they think that not speaking out on any particular issue, not speaking out actively, is about complicity. Everything is about complicity, though. Like, they act like that one individual action is, or inaction, is complicity, when in fact, being American means that you are complicit in several genocides, not just the one in Gaza or Palestine in general, also the ones happening in Sudan and the Congo. Like, you are complicit by being American. That is the truth. That's the reality. What the fuck do we do about it? How do we create? How do we, one, change the system to abolish this existing system? To ensure that that no longer is the case. What are we going to do about it? Like, cool, you identified the problem, but you're holding the wrong people accountable, and in fact, you're not actually doing anything because you are only committing friendly fire. Like, whenever somebody who's black or, you know, not Asian says, you know, bullshit about how Asians don't speak out enough, etc., even though they're also people of color, even though we're also people of color who are racialized and have histories of racism against us, they seem to forget that Asian culture is quite literally not like that. It does not operate that way. Most Asian Americans are people who do not speak out because we were taught not to speak out. What do you expect of us? It's like examples like that. It's that sort of thing, that line of thought, that frustrate me. Because to me, it's just like, shouldn't our goal be solidarity and unity? Then why don't you learn more about my culture, our cultures? Why don't you learn about a people before you judge them? The problem is that we don't. Because, of course, in the same way, so many white people and even Asian and Native and Latino people talk shit about black people in similar ways. Like, it is just a toxic cycle. One that is needless, one that is reactionary, one that does not emphasize care and love and mutual aid, but rather it emphasizes just like this lack of awareness, lack of empathy. Like, cruelty is literally the point of the West, of Western ideology, of Western lines of thought. And we're just supposed to pretend like that's okay because, you know, we live in the West. If you do live in the West, that's the justification, apparently. And then when you try to call people out, it's just like they will deny it. So of course it gets frustrating, because what they end up doing is trying to humiliate you. Like earlier today, I left a random Instagram comment on, I think, India Moore. She's a pro-Palestinian activist and also an actor. Basically, I left one under a reactionary comment, and basically what they told me was that, you know, like I told them that the fact that they believe that every single Jew is a Zionist makes them not healed, not entirely healed. And they were telling me that I'm not entirely healed because I believe in kumbaya. And it's like, bro, first off, you're talking about an important, sacred African concept, one that is literally about community, solidarity, etc. And you're mocking it. You are mocking somebody's culture of peace and unity. And all for what? That's why I told them that basically, like, no, this is Western indoctrination. What you are spouting to me is Western indoctrination. How the fuck do you have like a post on your Instagram saying that you're awake now 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, or whatever, and then the only thing that you're doing is spouting hate? Like, you literally have on your fucking profile, you know, and Jewish supremacy. It's like, what? I don't understand. I don't understand how these types of people don't see the parallels between their hatred and what the state of Israel, the Zionist state, is doing. How do you not see the parallels? You are playing into their hand. Israel literally needs anti-Semitism across the world in order for people who are Jewish to feel unsafe in their homelands, and in order to get them to believe, to brainwash them into believing that Israel is their only safe space in this world. That is the goal. Playing into that goal, playing into their hand. How the fuck do you actually think that you are awake or aware by playing into their hands, by being anti-fucking Semitic? What is... I don't... But again, I know that it's all about personalization, stereotyping as a way to react. It does get me angry because people don't realize it, but whatever. At least I spoke my piece. At least I said something. You know? Like, we love to react so fucking much that we can't even think, that we can't even, like, fucking try to understand the root causes. Because yesterday I was watching, like, this YouTube video, I think, and it was just, like, about, you know, why does China support Palestine? Why does Japan support Palestine? And then, of course, for some reason, there was, like, this piece about, like, okay, well, the Uyghur genocide didn't actually happen. It doesn't actually exist. In fact, this international organization claimed that that it isn't happening. And it's like, okay, you're missing the crucial context that the Communist Party of China quite literally has a bunch of resources. It is like China is the second largest economy in the world. Of course, those people in that organization, they want money. Of course, they're not going to talk about human rights abuses. Like when actual Uyghur people are literally in Turkey as refugees, where of course, ironically, the government actively attempts, cultural genocides against its own Kurdish minority. Like that's a cycle, and that's because of Western ideology and thinking and thought. I digress. Because the reality is still that, like, you are believing a government that only intends, I don't know, you're believing a government that doesn't actually hold the values that you think it does. Because if it can literally subjugate entire peoples and ethnic groups, whether historically or currently, because of course China has been, a subjugator in the past, in the very recent past as well. Like yes, you can argue that Tibet, right, for instance, maybe there was enslavement by the Dalai Lama. So what? And I'm not saying so what about enslavement, but rather about the fact that people want self-determination, right? That people should be able to have actual self-determination. People should not be subjugated in order to be free. That makes zero sense. That is exactly what Israel is trying to do to the people of Palestine, subjugating them into freedom, into the appearance of freedom, when in reality, of course, it's going to be at best a de facto state that is still under Israeli control, and at worst a complete wiping out of an entire people, only leaving them as a diaspora outside of the confines of what they plan as being Greater Israel. And yeah, that's the other thing I don't understand about like Western leftists as a whole. Like, why do you have to praise China? Why do you have to praise Russia? Why do you have to praise these other imperial powers that have historically been oppressive and have not even remotely attempted to pay reparations, not even remotely attempted to do anything significant for the well-being of the people who were oppressed or are still being oppressed? I don't understand it. And I say that as someone who is literally like, what did I do there? Yeah, I'm saying it as someone who is, I believe, I am like 7%. I'm anywhere between 7 to like 14 or whatever percent Chinese. I come from those people who oppressed other people, right? Even as someone who is Filipino, who has oppression in my recent lineage as well, oppression against my ancestors. I hold the lineage of the oppressed in my blood, but that doesn't mean that my blood doesn't that my blood is completely innocent and completely free of the sin of subjugation, the sin of just like literally wiping out entire ethnic groups, or at least attempting to do so. That is unfortunately something that many people of East and Southeast Asian descent have in their blood. Maybe I should change my stream title. The full people. I've just been yapping. I'll just be like Western indoctrination from an Asian perspective, because yeah, I do have an Asian perspective. Doesn't mean that I'm not also American or whatever, but yeah. Because apparently there's a shortage of Asian Twitch streamers who talk about politics, whatnot. So I'm just okay, you know what? Whatever. Here I am. I have 0 in the chat, no people in the chat. I keep my viewers hidden because I don't want to feel the pressure of having viewers watching me or whatever. And I'm still trying to clean up because yeah, I'm chronically depressed and I've made a mess, to say the very least. This is one of my dumping areas. Some of these things I haven't touched in years. I really don't know where to put this audio interface. I feel like I need to put it somewhere useful. I have another audio mixer interface thing coming tomorrow. Yeah, maybe I'll put it here. I need to seriously turn on this computer. There's I literally wanted to have a PC here I can stream from here and whatnot. Oop. At least my dog didn't bark. But yeah, if anyone is joining in, I'm trying to clean up my upstairs area of the house. This is where I live. My parents are downstairs and whatnot. That's their domain. This is mine. Recently unemployed, so I'm doing unemployed behavior stream. And I'm talking about, well, politics in general from my perspective as an Asian American, as a Filipino American. Also more specifically about Western indoctrination from an Asian perspective. And that's because I have a lot of gripes about not just the way that Asian Americans approach politics, but in general how the West does. I can, probably speak a bit more specifically about the Asian American community. Because yeah, it does get complex. Like, don't let people fool you into thinking that the political leanings and ideologies of Asians are supposed to be in any way, shape, or form simple. That's just not the case. Because the reality is that, yeah, many Asian people are like whitewashed, right? I I guess I do mean it in a bad way, but it's like a lot of people who are Asian literally have been taught to look at things from a white perspective, if not a white liberal perspective, because many Asians do live in close proximity with white Americans. And so as a result, because of that fact, and because many Asian, even though the Asian community as a whole, with the Filipino community actually haven't been here on Turtle Island for centuries now, ever since the 15th century, when the first Filipinos who reached Turtle Island as subjugates of Spanish colonizers, like they came here, they escaped, they intermingled and intermarried, etc., with local Native American groups in Louisiana, in southern Louisiana. And of course, that was like before the enslavement of Black Americans was even a thing. But at some point, many Black Americans became intermixed with those already intermixed peoples, and that's why a lot of Black Americans with roots in Louisiana, that's why they have Filipino descent, even if it's like 1%, even if it's like 2%, whatever. I mean, I have random Indian descent. I am cleaning my yeah, I'm just like being a nerd, but also I'm like trying to clean my way out of my depression, and I'm also trying to explain my gripes with Western ideology, civilization, etc., thought from my perspective as a Filipino American. Yeah. But yeah, I need to like seriously clean up a lot. Because I'm recently unemployed. I've been depressed for like months, years. Actually, I have like chronic depression. So it's really like ever since I was like 14. And I'm like in my early 30s now. But yeah, that's what I'm doing here. Just like unloading, unleashing, kind of like whatnot. Doing my best. From like whatever my queer and non-binary Asian disabled perspective can allow me to do. But today I really wanted to focus on my perspective as someone who is Asian. Because apparently there's like a shortage of like Filipino, especially content creators, who actually talk about politics and stuff like that. And for me, it's like, well, if I talk about politics, I'm doing something else. I'm cleaning up, I'm walking around the house. I also have ADHD, so like, can't really help it. I have to walk around, I have to pace around as I talk. This is like literally what I do at night. That's why I like sleep at 5 a.m. most of the time, because I spend the entire night like talking my way through different things. Don't exactly like it, but it is what it is. Like disability can be like really expensive and scary and just plain annoying. So yeah, I'm cleaning up my messes. Here are my new headphones, earphones. What the fuck is it doing out there? Oh, I'm gonna have to like redo this. Here's my insurance card stuff. I've wanted to clean for a while now. I just haven't given myself the time and space. So I have my felt island over here, and this actually is on purpose. It's my little music setup. I have an audio interface coming to replace this one. This one's kind of old. Yeah, I love this thing though. Like my unemployment project. As of late. I only started like making it around, is it like a week ago? Yeah, like probably the day before my official termination. And I've had like this European for a while, a few weeks, I think. I'm kind of doing my best to like find a place for everything. Just remember, like all the self-help books say, find a place for everything, and set it there. And then I completely disregard it within the span of a month. Maybe the place is here. For this one in particular. This is my calculator. What is it doing here? Studying data science. For fuck's sakes, like, I'm a grad student. I need my calculator. But yeah, let me get back to my. Let me get out of that tangent and go back to my other tangent, which was about, what I do not like about Western, specifically American, indoctrination. Because yeah, the truth of the matter is that like in the US we are just all about like, the personal, right? We personalize every little fucking thing. Everything is a personal failure. Basically. That's what we tell ourselves here in the US. We just like, oh well, you're a failure because blah blah blah. Instead of taking like any sense of like collective responsibility, right? It's just all about and solely about our individual failures. Like me being unemployed, that is apparently a failure on my part. Even though the job has taken so much from me. My mental health, my physical health, my just overall health. And I'm trying to get it back. In fact, my plan is like tomorrow to try to fill out like the online paperwork to cash out my retirement. I do have admittedly a significant sum in there that like my family and I can live off of between now and probably a year from now. And to me, it's a worthwhile sacrifice because, well, first off, of course, I'm gonna become a data scientist. Like, and I know what I'm doing. Apparently, I have like one of the highest grades in my class right now, so it's like, you know, even though I stress myself out about the fact that I'm probably not gonna get all A's this semester, you know, I might end up with a few A minuses and even a B. So I'm just like, okay, well, you know, I'm giving myself time and space. I'm still working hard. I'm still doing my best. But it's like sometimes I have to, you know, even though my next paper is due in exactly a week, I still have to take care of myself because nobody else is really able to. And even when my parents try, I'm always a worrier, chronic worrier as in like not warrior, like war, not like WAR, but WOR, warrior. It sounds the same because English is. I honestly don't know what type of. Like, I know it's an Indo-European language. I know it's a Western Germanic language, but English is so complicated, complex. That's why I don't blame people for like making up words. That's why I make up words too. Like I say fuckity all the time, for instance. And that's because it's like that's the perfect word to describe what I feel like it is just the case here in Western society. Things are just fuckity. Fuckity. Fuckity, fuckity, fuckity. Fuckity. Fuckity, fuckity, fuckity. Okay. Because I was saying fuckity. Like, wait. That sounds like one letter away from a slur. And it granted, I am gay. And so it's not really a slur if I said it, but still. I'm trying to avoid like saying any slur. If I can. I guess I'll call people the B word sometimes. If they're acting like it. And not a female dog. But if they're acting like they deserve the word, then they deserve the word. Yeah, I make a concerted effort, though, you know, otherwise to not. It's not really like not offend, as much as it is about like being mindful. Because apparently it is controversial to tell people to stop saying fucking words like idiot or moron. Even though they are very clearly ableist in origin. Literally had to like block a bunch of people off of my Facebook for that. They were just like, what are you talking about? I should have the right to call people idiots. To call people fucking ableist slurs. Like, bitch. Fucking for real. Like there are some slurs that, of course, have made it to a popular lexicon and they've lost their original meaning, right? But there are others, like moron and idiot. They have not. It was only like a few decades ago when those were not considered to be diagnoses, right? But yeah, we want the right to, in the West, we want the right to be able to be cruel, as cruel as possible. And so yeah, that's something that from my perspective I hate. I hate it. And of course, like in Japan, they have like a lot of anti-Korean racism. In Korea and China, they have a lot of anti-Japanese racism. Shit like that happens all over the world, right? But at the same time, it's like, okay, but should not be the case that a better world is one where cruelty is eliminated. But of course, some people take it too far. They think that cruelty being eliminated means, you know, what do you call it? Eliminating an entire people. It's like, no, that's genocide. That's eugenics. What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, I think a lot of people mistake yeah, I had to take off my headphones. I've had like this pain in this area around my ear, and I feel like it might be an ear infection or whatever. It doesn't really feel like an ear infection because it's not really getting worse, but it's not getting better. Might be TMJ pain, whatever. But yeah, no, there's like a lot of people who tend to think that yeah, like they take things too far, way too far, way too fucking far. They're just like, okay, well, everyone needs to be eliminated. Everyone needs to, we need to destroy entire communities because it's not right that they're on that land, for instance. And it's like, okay, like I can understand the sentiment, of course. Like I'm Filipino. There's a lot of white foreigners, but also other foreigners of like other like racial or ethnic backgrounds, and they use the Philippines kind of like a pedo playground. That does happen. The U.S. military is there, and so there's been a lot of like tensions with the military, and of course, the military there is based. The military that's based there, they're not all white. Some of them are black, some of them are Latino, some of them are even Filipino. Um, but like the reality is that like, oh yes, on one hand, we don't want like US imperialism, we don't want this and that, but to conflate it with racism, right? To conflate it with being okay with racism and being okay with anti-Semitism, to be okay with this concept or that concept, that's a step too far. Like every time, like what makes it so difficult for like protesters against the Zionist state, for instance, to speak out and be public about speaking out is the fact that many of them literally, when they post something online, it's like people bully them because they're like, you're colonizers, go back to your country. And it's like, I do say that type of shit sometimes to white Americans who annoy the fuck out of me. But like, they know it's a joke. I know it's a joke. I know they're not gonna do that. But like when it comes to anti-Semitism, it's like you're just so wantonly like like that's kind of the difference. It's like a lot of the people who say that sort of shit are part of groups that have historically oppressed Jewish people. It's like there are literal Nazis that have unfortunately joined the pro-Palestinian movement. I don't think they're the majority by any means, of course, but like they're the people who give Israel good reason, or like the plausible deniability, not good reason. There's no good reason for genocide, but you give them the plausible deniability to be able to just be hateful and genocide an entire people, because you're helping them create the environment elsewhere in the world, the environment that makes Jewish people feel unsafe. Like the way to get Jewish people out of that mindset of Zionism to begin with is to quite literally stop them from believing that Israel is the only place where they can or should feel safe. Because that is not true. That should not be true. But in fact, when you're like some dude from the fucking UK or Australia or New Zealand or the US or Canada, and you're talking about fucking conspiracies that have their roots in anti Semitism, and you're basically trying to say that that is somehow fucking what? Like, that's, liberation. That is Palestinian liberation. You are conflating so many different things that have no relation to each other in, you know, all notions of reality, because they do not. Not every single Jewish person is a Zionist. That is just the truth. And at the same time, most Jewish people who are Zionists, they are so because they feel unsafe in their homelands. By giving them permission to feel unsafe in their homelands, you are then encouraging them to quite literally, look to Israel. You're giving them a free pass, basically, to overlook the genocide that's happening in Palestine by going to Israel, by moving to Israel, etc. Don't give them that reasoning. Don't give them that excuse. Don't be the reason why they feel unsafe in the US, why they feel unsafe in Canada, why they feel unsafe in Europe. If Europe had not done that bullshit that they did to Jewish people during the Holocaust, I'm sorry, but what leverage would Israel even have as a Zionist entity? It would have none. It would have none. There would be no reason for why um so many Jewish people would be Zionists. And that's what I want to make clear. That cruelty is the point, and that cruelty is not going to do anything but beget cruelty, even more cruelty. Because when cruelty is the point, how the fuck do you think that people are going to liberate themselves? They won't. You can't liberate people by cruelty. You just cannot. That's just not going to happen. You can't, favor one group over the other. You can't. You have to see everyone as human. That is it. Those are the values that I was raised on, albeit not directly, but like those were the values of my ancestors. My parents being immigrants to the US, they did raise me on, just like American exceptionalism, all of that classical, bullshit, American imperialist indoctrination, right? But I at least recognize that me not no longer being a victim of said indoctrination, I know that I'm the exception here. And I know that for a fact, we need to focus on empathy, on love in general, over fucking hatred, over fucking the aesthetic of liberation by way of hate, by way of the loveless, according to bell hooks. It does no one any good when we are focused on fighting each other rather than fighting the ruling classes. That's the bottom line. Because billionaires fund APAC. Let's be clear, it's not Israel. Israel does not pay APAC. Israel is the ultimate beneficiary of APAC by way of lobbying by APAC to the US government to keep supporting Israel. But the reality is that Israel does not, fund APAC. It doesn't buy out anyone. Billionaires do. American billionaires. Some of them are, yes, Jewish, but many of them are not. Those are the people who we should be targeting, who should be, there should be protests at their homes. They should not feel comfortable. I believe that one of them is a Ukrainian American who founded WhatsApp, right? Helped found WhatsApp. I believe he was like either the biggest or the second biggest donor to APAC as of last year. There's so much that we can do in terms of holding people accountable and in terms of holding the right people accountable. We do not need to engage in reactionary bullshit. We just do not. And yeah, I do understand that like I'm not necessarily speaking from the majority perspective of Asian Americans or Asians as a whole, but rather from my own perspective. I am still an Asian American, so I have an Asian perspective regardless. Even if I was completely whitewashed, I would still have an Asian perspective, right? That's just the reality here. Um, and so yeah, that's why I wanted to make this stream. Talk it out, talk all of that out while I clean. I am very much like getting to the point of like finally being clean. Like, look, I have this printer that I've not been able to like use for a. Well, I mean, I've been using the printer clearly, but like I haven't been able to like take the cartridge out and then replace it with a new one because I had so much shit on top of it, and that all that shit is here though. That's the other problem. Yeah, I need to rest a little bit because I'm kind of feeling hungry, unfortunately, and I'm, uh, yeah, because I've been talking for like a straight hour and a half, I think. I have a Hasanabi stream over here. I have my shit that I have to clean up over here. Apparently that Instagram comment that I made in response to a different Instagram comment had a bunch of people, like well, only 5 people. Yes, for me that's a bunch of people because I have like 0 followers on that account specifically. And then like whenever I have a bunch of followers on an Instagram account, I like I just abandon it. Eventually, they get sick of it. Crazy. What memes did I share today? A bunch of reactions, 50 plus notifications. Oh yeah, this cat meme about social anxiety. This other cat meme. Okay, I share a bunch of cats for somebody who is literally allergic to fucking to cats. I'm trying to like catch my breath again. Yeah, I still have asthma, unfortunately. Alright. Yeah. Taking the rest. And like plot where do I put this? Right. I have my iPad desk. Yeah, and I need to like play my um instruments, my MIDI thing, MIDI keyboard. I have to I've been trying every day since like Wednesday or Thursday or whatever to make a habit out of doing like the beat making app that I have now. You know what? I need a hobby. While I'm unemployed to make like the whole job search process that I'm gonna have to do bearable. I have a language learning app. Um, I have a bunch of apps basically. I'm just like, okay, well, I need to make music. I need to make art. So I bought a bunch of paint. I bought a bunch of like audio gear. Yeah, I hate consumerism as much as the next person, but it's like when therapy is not enough, you you kind of have to figure out a way for yourself, like what works for you. Unfortunately, that is like buying things that works for me. I wish I could like, yeah. My goal though is to like make it so that like a $20 purchase is something that I can be happy about again. Because right now I'm at the point where like it has to be at least $50. But that's better than like where I had been for like months where I have to purchase something for over $100 for before I'm happy about it, before I feel satisfied, right? I'm getting better. I'm getting better. Not just because of like me being laid off. It's about like I think my mental health is getting better in general. Yeah. But yeah. Like if anyone is even here and doesn't know anything about me, I am Chris, also known as Fornesus. I am a data science student at Boston University, online, of course, because I live in Texas. I've been here most of my life, ever since I was 3 years old. I'm like 31 now, and so yeah, I've been here for a while. I'm getting up there in terms of age, at least the internet says so. What else about me? I kind of consider myself to be a leftist. I know I'm like if I really give myself a label, it would probably be communist, but it's illegal to be a communist in the Philippines, and so there's that. And I'm Filipino too. I'm also queer, non-binary, etc. And I've been doing my best to explain politics, my view of politics from my perspective as an Asian American. Mainly because a lot of Asian Americans don't tend to be listened to when it comes to political discourse, right? Like basically, if an Asian person is being listened to, being heard, being vocal about politics, it's always about being vocal for someone else. It's almost never about being vocal for people back home. It's almost never about being vocal for people in Asia, people in our local communities, people like our own communities even. It's always about like it's almost always about being vocal for someone else, and of course, solidarity is solidarity. That's important. But I want to, shed light on Asian American issues. Want to shed light on, general political issues as well, like such as Western indoctrination, stuff like that. Yeah, I think once I am done here, I'm gonna try to do a reading of this book. My automaton, like that. That's my automaton. I would say like otamatone, but I don't know if that's like offensive. I don't really know Japanese. I mean, I could probably try to learn Japanese on that language learning app that I have, but like my focus right now is to learn Tagalog. Um, because I feel like I might have to move to the Philippines to like I don't know. I feel like I might have to move to the Philippines at some point in the next, maybe not the next year, maybe not this year, but within the next 12 months. It just feels like it. I don't know. I live in Texas, so the political environment here is not good at all. I've been here most of my life. So yeah. I moved here when I was yeah. I think I already mentioned that. I was 3. I always like repeat myself because I always forget what I said. That's the problem with ADHD. Yeah, I have ADHD, by the way. Also very autistic. That's why I like speak about the most obscure topics. Yeah, maybe I am a bit of an audiophile because I just remember. I just remember this has like I was like in is it called internal something in ear monitors actually. Yeah, I have IEMs in here. What I have in here. I love them. I love them, but I haven't used them in a while. But I do plan on using them again. And once I get this like whole ear issue sorted out, I will definitely be using them again. Oh my god, wait. I bought one of these and I already have one that's not even opened yet. Oops. Oh well. I mean, this is what I take on a regular basis. So I'll think myself ahead, like in like 40, 50 days in advance, I guess. Well, wait, no, I just opened this one. It's gonna be more than that. But it's like my medicine. I'm not putting this there. I'm gonna turn this into like audio table, I guess. So it's just like having a bunch of boxes. I wish there was like such thing as like an audio thing, mic setup that you can just use like the what do you call it, the Wi-Fi, right, to maintain a connection. Pretty sure there is one. I just don't have one. I mean, technically, I think I could have used this, like if I had it like active or whatever. I might actually have the audio active on accident, and like but no, I would have heard it on my stream before I mess with my audio earlier, but before I like took off my headphones because my ears really hurt. This comes here. No, this is the case. I have to throw this away. Um, So I have my islands of filth. I have my islands of filth. I think that might be like the extent of my cleaning. Like I'll just continue it after I come back home because I'm ending the stream at like around 4 something my time, so less than an hour from now. Yeah, and I really want to get to like reading that book. I'm just like, yeah, I feel like I need to read that book. This one, this book. I'm gonna keep everything at the islands of filth that I made. Forgot I have Camera Island. That's what I mean by like keeping everything in its own place. You know, finding the space to begin with. Yeah, so here. Oh yeah, I have my guides. I don't throw away my guides because I'm just like, I might not know what to do. At some point, I might need them. I only throw away the guides if like I feel like I'm an expert at using new like audio gear or whatever. I ended up buying like for this. I know what to do here with this thing. This is a great audio like interface, but it's also like way more expensive than the one from Apple, which is like this thing. They basically do the same thing. Apparently, like the Apple one punches above its weight, but that one's also good. Like really good, apparently. That is true. It is really good. I just can't really use it anymore. Um, but yeah, cause oh yeah, completely forgot I have my MP3 player down there. It's on the floor. No help in sight. Oops. I have my Eufy. This is basically like a generic version of an uh whatever you call those things, AirTag. Yeah. Because I used to be like mainly an Android user for like my personal device, but then I switched to Apple. But then because of yeah, here's my Android. I have another one like mounted on top of my other PC. Well, my other PC. The reason why I that did change recently because of like the latest Android update, like Android 16. I got the beta version because I was excited, and so it has like desktop mode and everything. And so now I've been lately for like one of my classes, I have to use like the Kindle app to reach my textbook. So I've been using this, plugging it in to any type of like USB thing, like using it to I even have the ability to like use this here if I wanted to. Hey, I have this like fancy Lenovo. thing. Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot my dog is gonna really cry. Oh wait, I didn't even turn it on. Oopsies. And I forgot to charge it. The hell? Got to charge the phone. Oh, good thing I have it. Here's my other phone. This does not have desktop mode. I was disappointed in that because I wanted like a dedicated phone to use for desktop mode. This is the only one that's capable because of hardware limitations. Okay, my dog's crying now. I'm gonna have to get her. Yeah. The reason why I can't use like I normally have like this neck thing that I use, but I'm like, between my iPhone battery being like sucky, like literally having gone down by like 6 points, even by 6% even though I have placed it on like this uh stand, like this like wireless charging thing. Yeah, it's sucks. Oh yeah, I might need to do something. Hey, desktop mode right here. Yeah, I used the like desktop mode to access my textbook off Kindle, and then also to do like Replit stuff. Connection timed out off. See, now it works. Oh, come on. Really? Okay, well, it logged me off. I kind of hate Android for like doing that type of bullshit, but it does happen. Right, here's just my email, and email is weird. Okay, well, I see my dog. See, she's trying to come upstairs, but she can't because she's too fat. Like, look, she's too fat. So cute. Vicky, may I come upstairs? All right. She's crying and yelping. That. Oh wait, I forgot. Like I can't really like my audio doesn't really work there, so I was like yapping. Okay, let me get her. Cookie. Hi, Cookie. Hi, Cookie. Hi, Cookie Monster. Oh, so cute. Oh, oops. Yeah, she wanted me to bring her up so that she could watch my father pick up my mother. Again, I made me a compromise so I can do that myself. Also, he doesn't go to grad school. I do. I never have a day off. This is technically my day off, but look what I'm doing. Cleaning up shit. Okay. Yeah, so that was desktop mode on my Android phone. I love that thing. I love that my Android can do that now. I love Chromebooks too. I have like a Chromebook laptop and a Chrome desktop. Chromebox. Yeah, that's what you call it. My Chromebox. Where's my Chromebook? Oops, it's not here. Oh, here. Yeah, it is here. Alright, so I'm gonna put the ink cartridge that I need to replace over here. I remember to replace it later on in the day or whatever. And then have my, this is a lamp, portable lamp, just in case something goes wrong in terms of like um power outages, because we get power outages here all the time in the Houston area, Texas as a whole. But I feel like it's like very specific to my part of Houston because I'm out in the suburbs near the country. I see cattle almost every day. If I was looking for it, I could see it. They usually come out in like the afternoon to graze and whatever cow things they do. That's why I guess maybe that's why I don't like eating cattle like beef. I mean, yeah, because I'm just like, oh, those are cute. I want to eat that. Anyway, yeah, I think I'm like very much over this whole like I have to clean things now. Like yeah, I think I'm very much over like the whole cleaning thing. Feel like just walking now, and I feel like really reading that book, reading that damn not damn book. This is an anthology for anti-imperialist thoughts in the Philippines. It's kind of like one of the ways that like it was really crucial, and like I feel like part of the reason why. Yeah, and I feel like part of the reason why it wasn't published until like the late '80s was because of the Marcos administration. You know, even though the administration that replaced it was, also pro-American and whatever, the Marcos administration, they were the first. They were the OGs in terms of like modeling what American interference in an entire country by basically letting America take over an entire nation state that literally just gained independence from the US. That was like the model. Like his administration was the model for that. That's why I wanted to get that book so bad, even though I had to use Amazon and such. Get the book. That's why I have this book now. Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing this screen, stop mirroring. No, I'll finish the cleaning later on during the day. Probably after I come back. I will also like turn this off. Um, I do miss using this mic. It's just very big. That's why I didn't want to use it. But apparently, it's the best one I have. Even though this one was like 3 times the price. Pisses me off. Whatever. Does piss me off though. Yeah, actually, let me mute that mic. and unmute this one. Alright, here I am. I will now read this book that I have. Oh, I probably should have this. Oh, yeah, you know what? I'll put this away first before I read anything. So I don't forget. Now, actually, let me. I literally have like a switcher, like that thing that I can use to switch to a different view. It should be. Shoot. Oh yeah, this one. This one. Sorry. Sorry. I completely forgot how I set up my stream. Alright. So here is. So I guess if we go back here, we can see that the stated approximation of well, actually, let me like change my stream first. Sorry. I'm gonna change this to just chatting stream. Because I'm done with my IRL component. I'm done with my ADHD thing. Well, I'm not ever gonna be done with ADHD. It's impossible. But I am going to try to focus now on, of course, not just the Philippines, but just like the reason why talking about the Filipino genocide is important and why it's relevant in today's context. And of course, most notably, it's important in terms of the Palestinian struggle, right? Because what Israel is currently doing, what the Zionist state is doing to Palestine, is quite literally mirroring what the US did to um not only its own indigenous people but also the people of the Philippines, my ancestors. And as you can see on this screen, uh approximately, you know, a figure of 200,000 to a million. So the actual figure that academic scholars have found, most notably Luz Viminda, yeah, I mean, I'll see her name here because I have it bookmarked. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Luz Viminda, Francisco, because in Tagalog and Philippine languages, there's no such thing as an F for Frank or Francisco. it's Francisco, and then there's no such thing as a V, so it's Luz Biminda, not Luz Viminda. It's Luz Biminda. Yeah, that is the name of the author of the um scholar who found out about the actual scope of genocide in the Philippines under the Philippine American War. So this is what I'm talking about when I say Philippine genocide, Filipino genocide, whatever. I am speaking about this. This is an event that happened, you know, over 120 years ago. Um, Technically over 120 years ago, give or take. Basically, what happened here was the Spanish American war, right? Because what Spain did, of course, to the Philippines was colonize the Philippines, my ancestors, for well over 3 centuries, right? 300 and 20 something, not even 20 something years. It's like 373 years, I believe, is like the official number given from like 1565 to 1898. And yeah, like places like Cebu and Manila, they are also known as Manila by most people. They were they were among the first to be colonized, as well as Cavite, which is where the province where my mother is from. Um, and so like my ancestors were quite literally colonized for over 3 centuries, right? And so I feel like it is important to talk about the Filipino genocide. It's important to talk about the Philippine American War as a whole. Um, just because it gives us a pretext for, why is Israel doing what it's currently doing to the Palestinian people? Because the US did what it, because the US did what it did to so many indigenous peoples, including my ancestors. Um, right. And so yeah, the actual figure stated in this book. This is the book where you know that figure took place. So basically, you know, um, yeah, the first Vietnam, the Philippine American War, 1899 to 1902, and I guess the name of the actual book was "The Philippines and of an Illusion." And this anthology, this like book was released in like 1980 something, either 86 or 87 or 88. Yeah, I know it's like the mid to late 80s. I keep barking at. But yeah. So the figure stated. So the figure stated. What cookie? So the figure stated. What? He's such a baby. All right. Yeah. So the figure stated officially by scholar Luis Biminda Francisco was 1.4 million. That's right, 1.4 million of my ancestors. That's approximately 1/6 of the entire Philippine population. Um, yeah, that's around the same percentage of North Koreans that were killed during the Korean War. So around 20% in their case. So kind of close. Yeah. Um, yeah. So 1.4 million Filipinos were killed during the Philippine American War, and I'm talking about civilians, just civilians. Um, right. That's what she found. So here, what we see is maybe I should. Isn't there like a reading? I should go very I've literally never streamed on the book one, and I probably will never again. But yeah. So here, there's like this selection in the Philippines Reader. That's the name of the book, the Philippines Reader. So one selection, 1.1, the Philippine American War by Luz Biminda Francisco. So again, V's are pronounced as B's, and F's for Frank are pronounced as um P's, or like P's or whatever. So anyway, editor's introduction. When Emilio Aguinaldo, from a small landlord background, took over command from Andres Bonifacio, it signified new influence for the Philippine elite in the leadership of the armed Philippine resistance to Spanish rule. This influence brought with it a long-standing tendency on the part of the elite to further their own interests at the expense of the struggle for national independence, in this way to compromise with alien rule by the Spanish, of course. Aguinaldo took command in 1897, and in the same year, the leadership of the resistance entered into negotiations with the Spanish colonialists, agreeing to halt the fighting in what was called the Pact of Biakna Bato, named for the location of Aguinaldo's headquarters. The Spanish, for their part, promised a large sum of money to the Aguinaldo leadership and certain reforms, including elite access to additional political office under Spanish rule. So yes, so if you didn't know, there was something called the Spanish casta system, where basically, there was a mestizo class, there was a class of Spaniards, the white class, but anyone with Spanish background was considered, you know, more privileged than somebody who was just, like Filipino, like exclusively of Filipino descent, right? So at this point, Aguinaldo, and so the if you were in the landlord class, like Emilio Aguinaldo, then that means that you were likely mestizo. At this point, Aguinaldo left the Philippines for Hong Kong and Singapore. Later on, representatives of Admiral Dewey met with him and brought him back to the Philippines on a U.S. naval vessel with verbal assurances of U.S. assistance to the Philippine struggle for independence. Before Aguinaldo's return, however, the nationalists started to fight again, and the reforms promised by the Spaniards having failed to materialize. And the result of this Philippine offensive was the siege of the Spanish forces in Maynila. And in 1898, the Spanish command in Maynila in the U.S., officers representing Admiral Dewey, conferenced behind the backs of Aguinaldo and his men in their positions outside Maynila. An agreement was reached that after a sham battle, because there was a second fake battle of Maynila, the Spanish would surrender to the U.S. military on the condition that the Philippine nationalists be excluded from Maynila. To this condition, U.S. officials readily agreed, of course, in order to colonize. Um, that's what the U.S. loves to do, and Cookie loves to mess with my entire setup. So let me fix this. Actually, I'm just gonna let her. There's no way you're looking at me. Yeah, I think she just wanted to sit down, to be on the floor, barking. Anyway, for many years, yeah, lost my place. Of course. To this condition, U.S. officials readily agreed to colonize my ancestors. After the mock battle took place, as planned, the U.S. military took over Manila from the Spanish and came into direct confrontation with the Filipinos. February 1899, the U.S. troops were ordered to move through the Philippine lines, and the war began. So yeah, yeah. So it's actually 1899, not 1898. Yeah, so it was the next year when the Philippines became occupied territory. For many years, the Philippine War has been a forgotten war in the United States. History textbooks have typically devoted pages to the Spanish American War and only a paragraph or two to the Philippine conflict, but the Spanish American War was much shorter and less costly in terms of lives and money, but further, it was less significant historically since it merely reasserted a pre existing US hegemony in Central and South America. Because, of course, the Monroe Doctrine was a thing already. It was something that like was established as American policy. Yeah, yeah, and basically, if you don't know, the Monroe Doctrine is basically this policy that the U.S. would be in charge of like stewarding relations among the nations of the Americas of North and South America. Um, yeah. Whereas the Philippine American War established the U.S. as an Asian power for the very first time. And yes, that was true. So nations, like individuals, have a way of putting out of sight and mind past behavior that's embarrassing or negates the preferred self-image. Of course, American exceptionalism, right? The Spanish-American War, which resulted in a semblance, at least, of freedom for Cuba, has been well remembered. The Philippine-American War, which resulted in the U.S. colonial rule, has virtually disappeared. And of course, like, it also goes into the Asian, the general Asian model minority myth, right? The fact that Asians are just supposed to be these subservient people. We're like, I'm just supposed to be serving the system, enforcing the system, much like the white working class. Um, and basically being like upheld as the minority that succeeded in the empire, and thus, you know, having a sort of like privilege by erasure, right? Perhaps it's also no accident that the Philippine scholar Luz Biminda Francisco wrote her penetrating account of the US war in the Philippines in 1973, at a time when the US was engaged in another war of intervention in Southeast Asia, the Vietnam War, of course. And that led many to question and re-examine the foreign policy of the US, both present and both past and present, specifically in relation to third world countries. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is like a very interesting excerpt, in my opinion. Um, yeah. Also, maybe I shouldn't have done like the book thing because I don't intend on like reading the entire, even this entire section. Like right now, I literally have to leave at like in a few minutes, probably. Yeah, so I'm gonna put this over here. This is what I want to read right now, but I'm gonna need to do something with my nose real quick. I did not even bother to like blow my nose. I'm just gonna shift my category again. Why the hell did I do books? I don't think, and Why would I do books? I don't have the time to like read entire books. Not in this day and age, and with my current unemployed status. No, I don't. Also, being a grad school student, I mean, I have to read, but not books. Yeah. Anyway, the cost of the war. So again, anyone's coming in, I'm reading from the Philippines Reader, which is a book that was released right after the end of the Marcos administration, which was a dictatorship that ruled the Philippines for 2 decades, um, probably 3 decades to be honest, or almost 3 decades. So yeah, the cost of the war. The reason why I'm reading this is because I wanted to explore, the colonial legacy, right? Like, like I wanted to bring an Asian American perspective to political discourse that really is not out here to a meaningful degree. There are of course Asian political commentators, but it's like the perspective is always from an outsider rather than looking at the actual legacy of racism against Asian Americans and against Asian people as a whole, specifically in terms of colonialism, because the U.S. has colonized several Asian nations and occupied several Asian nations, Afghanistan, Iraq, but also the Philippines, where my ancestors are from, in Vietnam, and parts of Cambodia and Laos, of course. So yeah, this one is about the cost of the Philippine American War. How many Filipinos died resisting American aggression? It's doubtful if historians will ever agree on a figure that's anything more than a guess. But the figure of 250,000 crops up in various works. One suspects it's chosen in repeated ignorance and in the absence of hard evidence to the contrary, because of course there is not that much evidence to suggest that only that many people were killed in the Philippine American War, and of course civilians. Records of the killing were not kept, and Americans were anxious to suppress true awareness of the extent of the slaughter in any case. Of course, that also plays into why the model minority myth against Asian Americans, right? Why that is why that's something that all the time is, you know, stated, right? Why it's always brought up as a point to, you know, veer off of discussions about anti-Asian racism, because the US did a number on Asia. Let's be very clear. Whether you're talking about South Asia and Afghanistan, or you're talking about Southeast Asia and the Philippines and Vietnam, or even West Asia in terms of Iraq, right? Yeah. And so, you know, Americans were anxious to express a true awareness of the extent of the slaughter in any case in order to avoid fueling domestic anti-imperialist protests, which was definitely a thing because if you remember, and if you're American, Theodore Roosevelt, um, even though start he did participate in the initial occupation of the Philippines, he later became an anti-imperialist who actually, you know, he literally, wanted the occupation of the Philippines to end, but the Congress wouldn't allow that to happen, etc. While he was president. But yeah, that was one of the many progressive battles that he fought for. Right? How many died of disease and um the effects of concentration camp life is even more difficult to assess because there were concentration camps in the Philippines called reconcentrado camps, I think. That's what they call it there locally. Yeah, and that did happen not only under Spanish rule, but they really ramped up during American rule in order to suppress revolutionaries and revolutionary sentiment. General Bell, who one imagines might be in as good a position to judge such matters as anyone, estimated in the New York Times interview that over 600,000 people in Luzon alone had been killed or had died of a disease as a result of the war. And today, around a third of the entire Philippine population, or about like a half of the Philippine population actually, reside in the island of Luzon. So yeah, that's just some context there. Have been killed or died as a result, or had died of disease as a result of the war. The estimate given in May 1901 means that Bell did not include the effect of the Panay campaign, the Samar campaign, or his own bloodthirsty Batangas campaign, where at least 100,000 people died. And my roots on my maternal side come from both Cavite and Batangas. So my ancestors quite literally stated right here who were murdered by American imperialist um, troops. So all of which occurred after his 1901 interview, nor did include the post-war period, which saw the confinement of 300,000 people in Albay, which is a province in the Visayas region, wanton slaughter in Mindanao, which is another major island in the Philippines, and astonishing death rates in Bilibid prison, to name just but three instances where killing continued. So yeah. So a million deaths, one does not happily contemplate such carnage of innocent people who fought with extraordinary bravery and cause that which was just, but is now all but forgotten. Exactly. Such an estimate, however, might conceivably err on the side of understatement, and that is true. Um, Even a figure of 1 million is likely an understatement, just because of the sheer brutality of the many campaigns that were waged against the different ethnic groups of the Philippines, including my own ethnic group, the Tagalog. Um, yeah, and such an estimate, however, might conceivably err on the side. Okay, I read that already. To again quote the anonymous U.S. congressman, they never rebel in Luzon anymore because there isn't anybody left to rebel. What do you think that means? That means so many people were killed. So many of my ancestors were killed in Luzon. Like, yeah, and like most people of Tagalog descent, I have ancestry from all over the Philippines, but still. So that is, the section of the yeah, that is a section of the Philippines reader, specifically where the actual cost of the Philippine American War is stated by Luis Biminda Francisco, who was a scholar, a late scholar, um of Philippine history, basically. And in the 60s and 70s, she basically made a concerted effort to make sure that there was a full accounting of the many murders that occurred against the Philippine people. Of course, why am I talking about this? Because this is happening all over the world right now, not just in Palestine, but also in Sudan, and to a somewhat lesser extent to the Kivu region, the Congo, and of course against Tigray as well. That's a region internationally known as being part of Ethiopia, but where there's a significant, independence movement for self determination, partially due to genocide happening against them by the Ethiopian government, right? And so, there's just so many instances where this is relevant because, first off, in the context of the U.S., right? this was the first example of, you know, an American genocide outside of what is now considered to be American soil, right? Because Filipinos never got the right to have citizenship. They basically had the same status as like American Samoa today, which is basically just like, you know, US nationals but not US citizens. And it was all because they were, you know, they're just seen as not being equal, right? Whereas if you're Puerto Rican or Guamanian, Chamorro, yeah, you most likely have the right to vote if you live in the US proper on the mainland US or Hawaii. Yeah, here specifically is a passage about basically the I believe the Batangas campaign where at least 100,000 Filipinos were killed. So beginning January 1, 1901, as promised, Batangas was indeed thoroughly searched and devastated, as were the neighboring provinces. And yeah, my parents come from the neighboring provinces directly. Like my mother was born in Cavite province, which is just north of Batangas, and just east of Batangas is Quezon province, where my father uh has his roots. Um, so yeah, um, Bell assembled 2,500 men, columns of 50, and hunt for Malbar was on. I'm guessing that's a Philippine revolutionary. I have never heard of him until now. Expecting to destroy everything, Bell was at least as ruthless as Smith had been in the preceding extermination campaigns. I guess they're talking about the ones in Samar and Panay, which are like islands just to the south of Luzon, but inhabited by completely different ethnic groups known as the Bisaya people. Whereas this portion of Luzon, Batangas is almost exclusively Tagalog in terms of like its native population. It's like about as native Tagalog as you can get. Them in Marinduque, which is an island just south of Luzon as well. So the details of the concentration camp policy were, by now, pressingly familiar. Filipinos were rounded up and herded into detention camps where overcrowded conditions and the lack of proper food and clothing resulted in the predictable spread of infectious diseases like malaria, beriberi, and dengue fever took their toll. One correspondent described the prisoners as a miserable looking lot of little brown rats, because, yeah, that's how they viewed my ancestors, little brown rats. And still, I have the ability to empathize with most white people, but that is the exception. Because, of course, I know that, like, white people, like, working class white people were not exactly viewed historically as privileged at all. And divide and conquer, of course, is the main tool of the colonizer. That's why I don't, even though even when I jokingly call white people colonizers, it's usually making fun of them. Like I know that systemically speaking, they are not capable of colonizing anything, or even like improving their own lives, because that's what being working class does to people. Um, according to yeah, there's a zone of death is written about here. So according to stats compiled by U.S. government officials, by the time Bell was finished, at least 100,000 people had been killed or had died in Batangas alone as a direct result of the scorched earth policies and the enormous dent in the population of the province, which was reduced by a third because of course. So yeah, Batangas province I guess was one of the more populous provinces in the Philippines at the time. Um, is reflected in the census figures. American policy was so brutal that even some of the U.S. government personnel became apprehensive. The American civil governor of Tayabas, Tayabas province, that was the former name of Quezon province, noted in his official report that killing, burning, torture, and other harsh punishment was sowing the seeds for a perpetual revolution. If these things need be done, they had best be done by native troops so that the people of the U.S. will not be credited therewith. Oh, I don't even know how to process that. Um, yeah, that's great. It's like, no, you need brown faces to kill other brown faces. I guess the plausible deniability aspect of war, right? Just like what happened with North Korea, because most of the troops that engaged in the killing of like 5 million Koreans during North Koreans during the Korean War, the majority were South Koreans, um, South Korean troops who did that. So that there's the plausible deniability factor there. Um, yeah. Even though, of course, we know that the U.S. was ultimately one of the responsible parties, wasn't alone as a responsible party because, of course, Russia and China were also involved, but still. Um, so with Malabar's surrender in 1902, the Americans at long last felt the war was practically over, and President Roosevelt proclaimed it to be over on July 4th, 1902. But that didn't actually happen on the ground. Malabar surrendered, but many of his men emerged to carry on the struggle in even places that were considered to be pacified by the U.S. government, and that's why the actual war ended in 1913. Because the formal genocide did end around 1902, though. But like, yeah, yeah. So there's that. That was interesting to read. I've been wanting to read this for a while now, but I have to go now. My mother's home. We are going to a park with Cookie. I feel like she just like pooped. Yeah, she pooped downstairs. Yeah, so that's I guess I can read this like at some point either this week or next week. I have like a big project due, three big projects due, but I'll try to find the time at some point. Anyway, to whoever was watching, thank you. Salamat. I'll see you again soon. In the meantime,